Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome to a Books Beside My Bed video. For anyone who is new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and for anyone who's very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 2nd until the 8th of May. I read a total of 7 different things this week, including 2 picture books, 1 short story and 4 novels. I read a total of 1,524 pages and I have read 164 books so far this year. I'm going to kick off with the picture books, one of which I don't have here because I've actually already taken it into work because I read it during the week and I forgot to bring it home. And that is Wild About Mums by Philip Bunting. This is a book all about animal mothers, and it is a really fantastic non-fiction storybook that was perfect to read to my kids for the week leading up to Mother's Day. We learned all about the different traits that mothers might have, and each trait was then allocated to an actual animal mother. And so we learned a little bit in a tiny little paragraph about that particular type of animal and what its mothering skills are like. And it was just adorable. It has gorgeous pictures. I'm kind of annoyed at myself because I forgot to bring it home, so I can't hold it up and show you the pictures, but it was just gorgeous. So much so that the second picture book that I read this week was another one by him, and this is The Wonderful Wisdom of Ants. Again, this is a non-fiction book. This is all about ants, how they live, how they work, and it is just fantastic. There's a lot of humour in this book. One of my particular favourite pages is this one that describes all of the different types of roles that ants can have and how all of the important roles go to the women. It's just very cleverly written so that it injects so much humour and makes it fun and enjoyable for kids to read, which is why I love Philip Bunting's work so much. He also does write fiction stories and also books that play with words, but it's his non-fiction books that I find truly fantastic to read. Moving right along into the novels that I read this week, the first one was Take Me Home by Carly Lane. This is her most recent release. It did come out last week, I think on the 4th of May, and this is an Australian rural romance, and it follows Elle, who is living in her hometown. She is one of 4 children, and of the 4 children, she's sort of the one who doesn't have massive aspirations career-wise. She's quite happy working in the small town's grocery store, and at the beginning of the book, her grandmother has just passed away and they were very, very close. Her grandmother was originally from Scotland, and so the two of them shared lots of stories of her grandmother's past. And when her grandmother's will is read out, her grandmother has left Elle some money so that she can travel to Scotland, which had always been a plan of the two of them had. But this time her grandmother would like Elle to take her ashes home. Elle jumps on this chance and she goes to Scotland and she begins to explore, and she meets her extended family, and she begins to feel like she has a real home and a real place. And there is a romance in there towards the end. It is probably more closer to women's fiction, but the romance at the end of the book was just beautiful and I really, really enjoyed it. This was a review copy from Alan and Unwin, so thank you very much to them. I do have a full review for this on my blog already. Then I read Katie Roberts' April Patreon short story, which was a Beast and Cohen story. So Beast is a character from the Wicked Villain series and Cohen is a character from the Sabine Valley series. This one was super short and is sort of just the backstory between the two of them because they had a relationship, and by the time we meet Beast in the Wicked Villain series, that relationship is completely toast. It was very short. There's not a huge amount to say. It's just sort of backstory filler, and it was just nice to sort of get that finally because it's been hinted at for a while. Then for Star Wars Day, I did start reading a Star Wars book because how could I not? I did have a video out with some of my recommendations for starting places if you are someone who is interested in looking at starting in on the Star Wars books. But the book that I read was the new Thrawn trilogy, which is Thrawn Ascendancy, which is a prequel trilogy to the books that are currently out as part of the new canon. And this one is Chaos Rising by Timothy Zahn. I will say straight off the bat that this one was kind of not what I was expecting, and I don't want to say it was disappointing, but it was probably not as engaging for me throughout the entire reading experience as some of the other Thrawn books, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it, because I did. This one is set before Thrawn leaves the Chiss Ascendancy and travels into the known universe that Star Wars takes place in. So this is sort of set in the outer regions, and it is how he rises to where he is, how he rises into his rank, who his allies were and who his enemies were within the Chiss Ascendancy. And we also get to know a little bit more about certain characters. This one is really interesting. This one is very military based, but also very political, and I liked that aspect of it. For anyone who is familiar with the Thrawn series, he's a very interesting character because he's a military leader who studies his opponent's artwork and uses that to help him predict what they will do in battles. And so we begin to see a lot of that, and also where it sort of came from and why it makes him a bit of a weird character within his own people. But what I did really like was that he does have these friends and allies, but I did really enjoy sort of diving into this, even if it wasn't my favourite one that I've read. The next book that I read was another review copy. This time it was from Myra or HarperCollins, and that is Savannah's Secret by Mandy Magro. This is another rural romance story set in Australia, and we follow Savannah Garrett, who is a big city girl. She lived in Sydney and worked in a very high-end nightclub run by basically the mob, and then that all ends when she has to go into witness protection because she witnesses the death of her best friend at the hands of her boss. And so very quickly through the start of the book we get this backstory, we get sort of the trial, and then she is sent far away from the city so that her boss's old allies would not come after her, and so she is sent into this very small, very remote town, and she has to begin to rebuild her life with a new name. In this new town she is set up as a local bartender for the local very small pub, and she becomes friends with the publican and also his daughter, and then she also meets Ash Sullivan, who is one of the local townsmen who has a chopper mustering business. And Ash himself has had quite a traumatic past, including the death of his long-term girlfriend. And this book does have content warnings for suicide related to that. It's all off page, you don't see it, but it is mentioned and brought up. So by the time they meet, Ash has not been in a relationship for 5 or so years, and he's not really sure he's ready to have a relationship, but he meets Savannah and the two have an instant connection, and so they begin to spend time together. And then eventually Ash offers Savannah a place to stay. He has an extra little farmhouse on his property that no one's using, and she's otherwise living in the pub and it's not very comfortable there. And she takes him up on it, and she begins to find herself and rebuild this life. But she's still very conscious that people could be after her. So there is a suspense element in this towards the end, but overall it was just a really lovely story of these two characters having to negotiate their own troubled pasts to finding a future together. And it's all set in the country, and I love it. And the final book that I read this week, which I'm not going to spend too long talking about because it will have its own separate video, is Shards of Hope by Nalini Singh. This is book 14 in the Psy-Changeling series. I'm doing my full-on deep dive video series on these books, and this is one of the May read-along books for the Psy-Changeling readathon, which we have now since decided that we are going to continue past book 15 into the Psy-Trinity series and continue reading the rest of the books all the way up to the release of Last Guard, which is the book that's coming out at the end of June. So Shards of Hope is book 14. The romantic pairing in this one is Aiden Kai and Zyra Neve. They are both arrows. Aiden is the leader of the arrows, so it is a Psy-Psy relationship. It opens right in the middle of action. Both Aiden and Zyra have been kidnapped. They don't know who by, they don't know where they are, and Zyra has been shot, and the two have to escape. They end up finding themselves rescued by a local changeling pack, and as they heal and then eventually make their way back into their regular lives, they have to negotiate their relationship because both of them have very, very sad backstories, although Zyra's is just horrific. This one does have content warnings for childhood abuse by parents to a child. And then also you have the childhood abuse on the arrows as children. So be warned of that going into it, plus all the usual murder, violence, etc. that goes along with the Psy-Changeling series. But I'm really loving this book so much more than on reread than I did the first time through. There's just so much happening, and I just love the dynamic between Aiden and Zyra, but also Aiden and Vasek and all of the arrows as they try and rebuild the arrows from this very cold soldier-like Black Ops group into a found family unit. And it's just wonderful. So stay tuned, this video is coming soon. It's going to take me a while to film it because this one's going to be long. This is like the longest of the Psy-Changeling books so far. It's nearly 500 pages. I feel like I just talked a lot, so I'm sorry if any of that was incoherent. But those are the books that I read this week. I had a really fantastic reading week. I still have a few more review copies to read, and then I'm going to get stuck into planning my Love in the Night Readathon TBR because that's coming up and I'm so excited. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning to in the future. Otherwise, if you just want to let me know that you were here but you don't want to leave a comment, leave me a flower emoji in the comments. I don't know, you can pick whichever flower you like. It's getting very grey and dark here. I need something bright and cheerful. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.